The topic for our panel is life beyond the App Store. As you'll have heard from several of our speakers this morning, the App Store is a very exciting place to be. It's a rapidly changing place to be, but it's also an extremely difficult environment to do business in. So let's just go around the panel and we'll ask, starting with yourself, Jim. The App Store, is it always going to be the case?
I think there'll always be app stores. I mean, I made the point earlier that even Apple don't make money out of their app store. I think that the components of the application stores that are there will change. Ultimately, I think the trend will be a move towards WAC and widget type applications, and then to web, supplanting a lot of the things that are currently written as applications, although it'll vary by type. By type of content. Games, I think, are more likely to remain local. Other information, such as news, etc., is more likely just to disappear into the web and less likely to be an app in the future, I would say.
That's interesting because Wired in the UK recently posted a big piece saying that the web is dead, long live the App Store. Yes. So do you see, would you take issue with this, perhaps?
I don't think I share the same vision of the future. I think applications can be a very efficient way of extracting information and updating content, etc. When you've already found it and you've got a single source that you want, and you just want a refresh of that, it limits the. One of the reasons that the internet took off is just the boundlessness of it. That is limited by having applications as the channel, I believe.
Thank you. Richard, moving on.
Yeah, so I'm Richard from One Thumb Mobile, in case you don't know me. This is my 11th year doing kind of games and apps in mobile, and I've made so many mistakes predicting the future. I didn't think the iPhone would take off. I didn't think lots of things I got completely wrong. So my take on it is look very closely at what's happening. You know, for people like myself, there's absolutely no reason to overly predict what's going to happen because it's very unpredictable. So I'm much more interested in just seeing what happens, what's taking off, and taking that approach really rather than trying to tell the future.
Just to fill in some background, Richard's company One Thumb not only does games, but you've done a number of apps, entertainment and otherwise, for some leading brands and companies.
I mean, we're currently doing our own app. It's about a 10-year worth of work, which is, by game standards, minuscule, where you're probably in the thousands of man-years. But by the kind of gold rush mentality that's currently around, it's very large. So that's what we're currently doing. I mean, we've done a bunch of apps for brands like Honda, Nissan, Visa, Telefonica, ITV, Liverpool Football Club, lots of that kind of stuff, yeah.
Yeah. And of course, most notably, Bullseye, Jim Bowen, if you remember that.
Which actually got to the 4th top grossing app and 2nd overall best-selling app, not just game, in the App Store.
How did you deliver a speedboat?
After Angry Birds. A nice picture of a speedboat, animations, and well, you did get a speedboat, don't worry, you definitely can.
So it's true, you cannot be a better.
As well as a 70s fitted kitchen, and a NAF kind of brown set from many other wonderful prizes, which, by the way, the Americans just didn't get. And we're getting reviews. The prizes are naff. This game is a bit cheesy. And it's like, well, watch the TV show.
So, Richard, just staying on that topic for a second, the big brands that you've worked with, are you seeing them sort of jumping pell-mell into the app market, thinking we have to be here?
Well, I think right now Bob's Takeaway is jumping into the app industry. I mean, the brands were jumping into it back, 2005-06. So the big brands are already kind of very well experienced with mobile. So now we're finding that it's the very small brands that are coming along, just saying it's a kind of me too. Same with, will everyone need a website? Will everybody need a mobile app? I don't know. I mean, personally, most people coming to us wanting a mobile app, I'm recommending that they go and sort their social networking and web strategy out first. Quite often, they can deliver content to mobile just as well via web, like their catalogue or their online pizza delivery. A lot of the time, the main reason to make an app is purely PR purposes and this kind of thing, or to look forward thinking. I mean, there's lots of intangible reasons to do it, but the more people that are building apps now, the less the, you know, the earlier you are making an app, the more kind of it's newsworthy and the better it makes you look. Whereas now it's, you know, I think the mobile web personally is although we're going to stay app developers, I think the mobile web is probably going to be larger than apps.
Excellent. Moving on to yourself, James. Now, O2 Telefonica have obviously had a very big mobile presence in terms of selling content and selling apps. How has the rise of the App Store impacted O2's overall strategy? Or Telefonica, I do beg your pardon.
I think it's driven by the type of consumer. So I think for the kind of consumers that are just starting out on the path and they want a very quick and simple dipping the toe into the water, there's still an opportunity for kind of, I guess to use the old terms, carrier decks, you know, where they can have the reassurance and the trust of a brand like a Vodafone or an Orange, you know, because there's that trust if something goes wrong, someone's there to pick up the phone. Sure. But there is still that opportunity for the kind of, you know, the late majority, if you like. I think, however, you know, for the early adopters, the people walking around with the iPhones and all of those kinds of devices, they're not coming back. They're just going onto the open internet, they're going to the app stores, they're quite happy to bypass the operator completely. So, you know, in terms of revenue terms, things like, you know, the ringtone business, where a lot of companies did very well out of, you know, 5-10 years ago, it's gone. And, you know, Java Games, obviously, on deck sales of Java Games has been massively impacted as well. So, you know, it's a question of adapting, but it's also a question of knowing your audience. So, you know, if you take a look at the carrier decks, they've kind of subtly metamorphosized away from trying to be everything to everyone to being much more focused on that kind of audience that just want to have the quick soundbite, the quick dip in the toe. They don't want to have the complexity of searching out stuff because they're not as comfortable with using mobile internet on devices just yet. So, you know, the interesting challenge is to see how long that sustains itself for.
And are you finding increasing numbers of consumers are now willing to try mobile applications and data?
Yeah, I mean, as I said in the survey, you know, our data tells us it's number 6 in the purchasing decision making now, and that's massive. You know, it's always been the traditional stuff like, you know, the quality, you know, the attractiveness of the handset, the size, the touch screen, the camera, you know, all of those kind of factors were always the big driver of which phone the customer leaves the store with. Now, apps is one of those decision criteria.
Well, I'm currently on 3, so after seeing Jim's data, I'm coming to see you afterwards. I hear you're very good. Business-wise, naturally. Moving on to... Please, we're all professionals here. Kenny, Graham, moving on to you guys. Going from a standing start as a company who didn't necessarily have any app experience into having such a successful title as GPS Sprint. How did you find the initial traction within the App Store? I mean, you mentioned that you need to be playing a long game, but did it scare the life out of you?
Well, I'll let Graham answer that particular point, but I would like to say for anybody in the room that is approaching this from the point of developing an app, in terms of having the capability to do that, we've heard the mobile's been around forever, but we've never approached it. Been in the industry for 15 years in terms of digital. So in early days, CD-ROM moves to web, to touchscreen, to now social media is really important, and then mobile apps. And of course, mobile web, I totally agree. You know, that's another huge facet to what everyone should be communicating on. It really comes down to where are our users. We're not so worried about which app store or how many app stores there would be. Same as music finds itself through iTunes or Spotify. We just have to know where there's a good user base and then an opportunity for innovation. So we were quite confident, if you like, because you saw from the process that we took, a heavy research base, good solid strategy and ambition. I think I would say that we weren't terrifically scared, but it was definitely unknown.
I'll disagree. We're pretty scared of life.
It's good. A bit of controversy. Excellent. In what way? I guess is
Well, I mean, we published my previous workplace already published apps, and I know how unbelievably bad, even at the early days of development, how basically you earn, I don't know, $200 a month is quite possible if you're not categorized at all. From our point of view, the harsh reality is knowing that is you had to go for the top. You can't just sit there going, I'll punch something out that'll fit in there. You have to go, right, we're going to go for number one. And so when we launch, you're always hoping that you're going to have an instant hit. I suppose it's actually much more important for games to have an instant hit. But for us, luckily, we can build up a solid long-term customer base and fix any issues. So harsh, the roller coaster was harsh, and now it's eased off, and now looking forward.
One of the things that interested me greatly was when you talked about engaging with your consumers and your users, and it's something, again, we've heard multiple times this morning. I mean, you mentioned the bug fixing and so on, but do you actually reach out to them? Are you actively going out and... So
we use all the social platforms to interact with our users, Twitter, Facebook. We also integrate that into the app, but we also have a forum that users, and we publish our roadmap. We're so open that we go, look, here's our roadmap this month. This is what we're going to develop. Are you okay with this? And we have our advocates and our beta users who will go out and try all this for us, going, no, I really need this, or this needs this. And they're the ones that leave the reviews and tell their friends. So we went open on this because we believed we didn't really have such a unique idea that we had to sit there pretending that this was rocket science that we'd invented. What we really wanted was more, is our idea of the best of this implementation. So forums, Twitter, Facebook, email support, that's like that, all really, really important.
I'd also like to ask, one of the things that has happened very quickly is that the established genres, the games, for example, have quickly become dominant. I suppose because they're easy enough to categorise. Having useful apps is in some ways still a little more unusual for people. Did you find there was any resistance to your idea?
Can I say something quickly? Is this that in the early days of any new platform or technology, we are all talking about it in the pub, and so when you bring out you've got an iPhone, I've got an iPhone, you're going to go, well, have you seen this cool app? It's just a talking point. So, I mean, Angry Birds is almost like, the definition of a good game. Have you got it? You don't have it, you should play it. So I think that early days, apps benefit from just the natural word of mouth, and we don't take the apps for granted. So I think that's been, good word of mouth has been an important thing for Sprint GPS, and that's again comes back to the ratings. If people don't like it, they're not going to recommend it to their friends.
Okay, that's a good answer.